Hi there, everybody.
Hello, you good people.
Welcome
Friends. Go ahead.
Yeah, welcome to 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir.
I'll keep
This
going.
is
I'll let you
Robert.
handle it. Oh, hi.
Friends, lovers, welcome to our podcast today, this Sunday,
Sunday.
February 19th.
Monster trucks. Hi there. Welcome to 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir, live from Motown on this February 19th. February 19th, the 50th day of the year with 315 days left. 315 days left to make this your best year yet. Sounds like ample opportunity, and I hope you will take ample advantage of it. Ample advantage. Does that even make sense? Join us in the chat. Good to see a couple of you in there already. Hello, Apollo Zeus. Hello, Jim. The author, Jim Ashley, is in the house as well. Good to see you there, folks. Chime in. Casual day. Very casual day. We have a lot to talk about, but we're not going to get too heavy. No, this is going to be fun. Christmas is in 309 days. Halloween is in 254 days.
Yay!
But next up, we go green. St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day, 26 days. We're going to have some fun with that. We got to see if they're doing the Leprechauns Run, the 5K this year.
They are, but it's, I don't know exactly what the status is, but...
Oh, I think I saw they were doing it in Traverse City.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, well, that's a little bit away from Detroit, a little far away from Motown. We'll see about that. I hope you have some fun shenanigans and shamrocks and things planned for St. Patrick's Day. Easter, on the other hand, Easter is on April 9th. Now, I love Easter. I don't celebrate a religious holiday, but it's springtime. Spring is beginning, and a lavish feast. A good reason for some really high-quality chocolate. I've told you before my tip with regard to chocolate, right? If you're like me and you have to watch your calorie count, the secret is buy expensive chocolate. The really good stuff, so that, you don't have 20 Hershey bars laying around. Not that there's anything wrong with Hershey bars, but do Easter. But the crazy thing about Easter is one of those moving holidays. It's based on a combination of the lunar calendar and the solar calendar. And when the holiday happens after the official equinox, it's the strangest thing. The most unusual dates for Easter are the earliest date. March 22nd happens once every 210 years. And April 25th, which happens once every 133 years. Craziest thing. Look it up on Wikipedia. It's actually interesting how they figure that out. You're wondering, well, what's the simple answer? There isn't one. You've got to take a look. But Valentine's Day was super sweet.
Yeah, it was.
And Amy, I have to give you all the credit for that one because you chose this year's venue.
Well, we went to the same place we went to last year, but it was different, and it was much more extravagant, and it was really lovely. So, there's a lot of Henry Ford history around Michigan, around southeast Michigan, and there's one place called Grosse Pointe, which is northeast of Detroit, basically. And they have a lovely mansion, like a Tudor-style mansion, that Edsel and Eleanor Ford lived in. So that's Edsel is the son of Henry Ford. It's a very beautiful home. I don't know if I would call it a mansion necessarily, but it is a large house, larger than
mansion.
Yeah, it's larger than Henry Ford and Clara's Fairlane Henry Ford estate. But it was just really lovely. They had musicians there. They had this lovely female singer and this gentleman guitarist, and they had all kinds of hors d'oeuvres, which was just too much, but. And drinks. You get, price of admission, you get those 2 drink tickets. And that was really nice.
And they had drinks just for the holidays. Valentine's themed drinks.
Yes.
Yours, one was with tequila, the other with bourbon.
Yeah.
And all sorts of other goodness in there. Valentine's Day was super sweet. I hope you took my advice last week and had a great Valentine's, whether you have a Valentine in your life or just anybody else you love. And it can be anybody. I hope you had a nice Valentine's Day with your sweetie, with your daughter, with your mother, with whoever it is.
With your friend, with yourself even.
With your fine self. But on this date, February 19th, just real quick, on February 19th, Thomas Edison patented the phonograph, the record player. Well, at that point, he was putting the impressions on paper. That didn't work very well, but he eventually figured out, well, I could use tin, a soft metal that would still take an impression, but would be much more durable. And so we had tin cylinders, the original phonographs. Adam Mossoff posted on this. Now, if you're not already, well, if you're on Twitter, if you're not already following Adam Mossoff, you need to follow him. Great fun. He's our expert on intellectual property and patents from George Mason University.
Yes.
And he posted today about the phonograph, and you get to see the 3-page original patent. It's super, super cool. I actually wrote about that. What did I write? Well, I looked it up. Oh, here we go. Thomas Edison patented the phonograph on this date, and like Gutenberg's printing press, the phonograph will never be fully obsolete nor lose its charm. One of the things that I'm loving about phonographs is vinyl records are back. And they're back big time. We mentioned this a few weeks ago, and somebody said, yeah, and laser phonographs. Well, I looked that up. Okay, laser phonographs, there's one company actually producing them. And they're taking orders one at a time. They're not like a production line. They don't have them sitting on a shelf. And they cost $15,000 for this no-touch record player. And what I love about this is just, it's possible, so somebody did it. Okay, I'm not going to buy a $15,000 record player. Incidentally, the records have to be in good condition because the lasers glide across the surface with very little space. You've got to have good albums. And yeah, they don't wear out your records. Laser phonographs. But what's exciting about that to me, and the point that I made online, is you would think record players were obsolete. And maybe someday they will be. But just like we now print with lasers, and we still use printing presses, but those are going away. Someday there will be no more printing presses. And yet we will still celebrate Johannes Gutenberg, because that invention carried so much through history, made so much possible, almost everything else that has to do with the printed word. And Thomas Edison will be just like that, even if sound reproduction, God, I love digital sound reproduction. I love my iPhone and MP3 players and the internet and YouTube and all the ways we listen to music and audio and audible and speech. Even if everything resembling a phonograph goes away, what Thomas Edison made possible with that invention will be just like what Gutenberg made possible with the printing press. So, huge. Anyway, if I go on a little long, it's because I get really excited about this stuff. It's amazing to me what was made possible by sound reproduction.
Yes, among other 1,000+ patents that Thomas Edison created. Yes. Yeah, he was, he was around Michigan. He just hung out around here with Henry Ford, his good friend, his good buddy.
Well, and you told the story about his lab, Menlo Park, was in Jersey, in New Jersey. It was not in Michigan. Yeah,
well, what was remaining of Menlo Park at the time was brought back here to Michigan and rebuilt according to the specifications of Mr. Thomas Edison himself.
Edison said Menlo Park should never be anywhere but on Jersey soil. How did Henry Ford get around that?
Henry Ford had a train company at the time, and well, he just took a few carloads of Jersey soil and put them onto the train and shipped it over to Dearborn, Michigan, where he filled in a big pit with
Jersey soil
from Menlo Park.
So if you go to the Greenfield Village property where you work, you can actually see Menlo Park in all of its glory.
Yes.
including the last chair that he sat on when he visited Menlo Park,
Yes.
which is nailed to the floor so that
Yes.
nobody ever moves it. And that will always be the last place that Thomas Edison sat in the Menlo Park labs.
Yeah, barely anybody. I don't know who sat in there last. Who knows? But it just sits there, and it's dusted every so often, of course.
Not a fancy chair. It's just a wooden chair.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Yeah. So, yes, on this date in 1878, Edison patents the phonograph. Another interesting one, real quick here, in 1963, February, so a few months before I was born, The Feminine Mystique was published, Betty Friedan. And it's so easy in 2023 to forget what that meant. And obviously, when I was a little kid, people were still talking about it, but I had no idea what the impact of a book that says, women, these amazing, powerful, intelligent, intellectual, and sexual beings are being encouraged to limit themselves to the role of housewives and housekeepers.
Mm-hmm. And caretakers and mothers and
it's hard to know what that actually meant in practice, especially now. The idea of women's liberation is that's so passé. That's yesterday's news. Now we're just working around the edges trying to get a few things right. And that I had to go back to The Feminine Mystique. Now I put a link in the show notes. You can actually read the book at archive.org. If you don't have an account, you can create an account there and check it out, just like a library. And it's amazing. From a description here, the book examines the many ways in which women were still oppressed by American society. In addition to scholarly research, Friedan drew on first-hand accounts from housewives to explain how women were taught. Now, I swear, this sounds crazy. It sounds Ozzie and Harriet. It sounds like, oh yeah, the dark past. And yet now, in the manosphere, or many conservative circles, I still hear people say, oh no, this was the way. This is the way it needs to be again. This is what a real man should be looking for. Friedan drew on first-hand accounts from housewives to explain how women were taught that homemaking and raising children was their sole purpose in life. How the education system and the field of psychology made women who sought fulfillment elsewhere seem neurotic, and the myriad ways that women's magazines, advertisers, and other elements of society reinforced women's secondary status.
Yeah, there was a time when women weren't allowed to get credit cards.
Oh, yeah.
You had to get your husband's approval.
Yeah, I'd like to open a bank account. I'd like to get a checking account.
Oof.
Oh, okay. Will your husband be coming by, or did you want to bring the paperwork to him?
Yeah. That's crazy. I mean, that was the 70s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was not that long ago.
Yeah, well, the book was published in the late 60s. Early 60s, 63, same year I was born. That's not that long ago. And yet, it is kind of that long ago. It's 50, what is that, 50, it's February, it's today. So 60 years ago today, the book was published.
Yep.
And what a mess. I shouldn't say what a mess. How archaic, how arcane, anyway. Yes, even before it was published, The Feminine Mystique was called, overstated and, too obvious and feminine by people within the company that published it. After its release, much of the criticism essentially labeled Friedan hysteric, while many women took offense at her suggestion that they were not fulfilled by their family and domestic duties. Other critics pointed out that Friedan focused almost exclusively, this sounds more modern, criticized that she focused almost exclusively on straight, married, white, middle-class women. Well, too much of that.
You're supposed to be ashamed of that.
Yeah. Well, nowadays you would be ashamed of that. The woke would say,
what?
But where are the gay women? Where are the women of color?
Yeah.
Where are the non-binaries?
In the 60s, you should already have concepts like inclusivity and, and I mean, it's just so nitpicky to go back in time, ignore context, completely drop context, and, just start complaining because you like to complain. It's ridiculous.
Well, yeah. But, today's conservatives, they want women back in the kitchen, barefoot and pregnant.
Well, what's interesting to me is that, so I kind of wonder what would have happened if we hadn't had World War I, and that we kept peacetime all throughout, and we didn't have the two world wars or the communist wars or any of that. And mainly I say this because in the 1920s, you had the flappers. I mean, you just think of the turnaround of how women were viewed and how they viewed themselves, and how fashions changed, and how all kinds of conventions for women changed between the Edwardian period and the 1920s. They had the women dressed completely without corsets and bustles, and
it has been a long road.
Right. Well, there was so much change that happened in the Roaring '20s, as they called it. I do wonder.
Well, those are wanton women, painted ladies.
Well, but yes, I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that after that they had, censorship codes and, all of that, if that did not happen, if it just played out and people were actually free,
oh my gosh,
and there was free speech and free expression, and, the women's right to vote, after the women's right to vote, what would have happened, if we hadn't been caught up then after that with the world wars, and I still think you would have had the reactionaries. Yeah, you would have had all that pushback, all those people saying women are too free. Yeah. They've got too many choices these days. Yeah, and then of course, ironically, with World War II, you had women stepping up and doing all sorts of military service.
Rosie the Riveter.
Going into jobs that they had never had experience with, building machinery and all of that. But more so than that, actually, solving codes and figuring out, all of the things that they needed to do, being mathematicians, just doing all sorts of amazing things in World War II. And then after that, that's when the reactionaries pushed back again, and it was the 1950s, and so it was really interesting to see how that all played out between the women's right to vote and then up until the 60s.
It's a great point. You had the flappers, you had the jazz age, and you had the glamorous women of Hollywood, the kind of women, and especially the independent archetypes, people like Katharine Hepburn. You would think that would have been the end of all that. And yet, men kept trying to keep women barefoot, pregnant, in the kitchen. Women had to go, well, I don't know if they had to go out and burn their bras and declare their independence in that way. Now, I have to say, I talked about women being free. In the Facebook chat, Linda Cordair, the art goddess of all things art at Cordair.com, says, well, I am not free. No, Linda, you are not free. You are expensive. And I mean that in the best way, that goes back to an old, I can't remember. It was a comedy skit, but it was an anti-racist comedy skit about, I ain't free, I'm expensive. Love that line. So,
right.
Yes.
But I mean, that only took, between the 20s with the women's right to vote and the sexual revolution.
So it only took 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And it's 40, 50 50 years since then.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Things are getting better. And we'll we'll talk about things getting better here in a different context here in a minute.
Well, yeah, that'll be our bottom line. Real quick, also on this date, it's National Tug of War Day.
Here.
Now, the funny thing about that is... you win. The funny thing about that is, how many of you have ever actually participated in a tug of war?
I would love to. I don't think right now. I don't think I can.
But did you when you were young? Did you as a kid?
Yeah.
I guess if you went to camp, maybe that was one of the activities.
Well, that and you put your I don't know, you either tie your feet together with, two people together, and then you have a three-legged race or a sack race.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, actually, last year we participated in a sack race.
We did do a sack race, yeah, that's true, around Halloween.
It's quite fun.
Apollo Zeus says he loves Tug of War, so I assume that means you've been in one. I want to know how many people have actually participated. The funny thing to me is most of us have never been in a Tug of War, or maybe we were as kids, but it's such a common phrase. Somehow the phrase lingers because so many aspects of life have that character of being a tug of war. Also on this date, it's the birth date of Nicolaus Copernicus, the man behind the Copernican revolution of saying, the Bible suggests that the earth is the center of the universe and everything revolves around the earth, but maybe that's not true.
Maybe we should question this.
Yes.
Is this a valid idea? Church?
There are ways in which you can interpret the motions of the planets and the stars to make it work with the Earth at the center. Context is everything. We're sitting on Earth. But it took a little bit of creativity to say, well, but there's a larger answer here and a simpler answer, which is that all the planets are revolving around the sun. And the sun is revolving around a galactic center as well. Now, it's interesting that Copernicus' theory shook everything up, changed everything. And, of course, he went through the usual stuff. The works of Copernicus were placed on the Index of Forbidden Books by a decree of the Sacred Congregation of March 5th, 1616, more than 70 years after Copernicus' publication. It's interesting because he was sponsored by several religious people. He had friends that were bishops, and they thought what he was doing is great. It took some real higher-ups to say, oh, wait a minute. This is going to shake things up too much. People will start questioning their beliefs if we allow this to stand.
Linda Cordair on the Facebook chat, she mentions that Copernicus is featured in one of her favorite Brian Larson paintings.
Yes.
At Cordair.com. It's called Terra Incognita.
Outstanding. Good. Oh, good. She put a link in the chat. If you're on the Facebook chat, take a look. If you're on YouTube, just go to Cordair.com. You will find it under Brian Larson.
Oh, she actually just put a direct link in there. Thank you, Linda.
Excellent.
We love you.
Love that. Yeah, the book was on the forbidden list until where is my note here? Until 1758. When they removed the uncorrected book. Now, what do I mean by the uncorrected book? There was a corrected version. They edited it. They did what Roald Dahl's books have been getting lately. They edited them. They censored them, but not just stop people from reading them, but they actually changed the damn thing. Totally not cool. But anyway, birth date, Nicolaus Copernicus, 1473 to 1543. So he lived to be 70 years old. There's a good life right there. The rest of the birthdays today, 3 quick ones, and they're all still alive. I love this. Smokey. William Smokey Robinson. The singer is 83 years old today, and he's still touring.
Really?
So you can still hear Smokey sing, to steal a line there.
From the ABC song.
Yes. So yeah, Smokey Robinson is still out there singing. Happy birthday, Smokey. It's also Seal's 60th birthday. I didn't realize he was that old. Seal Henry Olusegun Olumide Odiola Samuel. Small wonder that he decided to perform just under the name Seal.
Yeah.
He's British, but he had parents of 2 different ethnic backgrounds, and he ended up with this really long name.
That's really neat.
So he decided to...
Now, he needs to wear a hat with a big feather, and then after every name, he needs to sweep the ground with it.
Yes. And he's earned that right.
Yeah.
I didn't realize he was that old, because he seemed like he was more recent to me.
Well, he's 60.
What's interesting about Seal to me, I mean, aside from the fact that he's an incredible singer, but his first 2 albums were produced by Trevor Horn.
Oh, yes, that's right.
And some of us know Trevor Horn as this guy who came on the scene in the first ever aired MTV music video.
Yeah.
Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles.
Yes, he was lead singer of the Buggles.
and became one of the greatest, Trevor Horn became one of the greatest record producers ever. He produced Seal's first 2 albums that were self-titled, so they had just ended up being called Seal 1 and Seal 2.
Yeah, and he did actually have one of my favorite bands or iterations of his musical career is a band called The Art of Noise.
Art of Noise, Trevor Horn,
Fun,
Art of Noise.
fun stuff. Very innovative album. Just FYI.
And what makes this especially fun to me, Trevor Horn was also a member of my favorite band, Yes, for about a year and a half.
Yes.
Lead singer, took over from John Anderson for a while. And then, after he leaves Yes, he comes back and produces the next Yes album, once John Anderson is back. But here's the fun part of it. Trevor Horn produces Seal's 2 breakthrough, billion-seller albums. Seal is touring this year, and Trevor Horn is touring with him as musical director. And as far as we know, he's probably going to play bass guitar as part of the band. But also the warm-up act for Seal. So soulful, so beautiful, so gritty. The warm-up band for Seal is the Buggles. Now, the last band you could imagine, the last people that would warm up for an artist like Seal, except Trevor Horn is the lead singer and bass player of the Buggles, basically the mastermind behind everything that they did. Between him and Jeff Downs, I think Jeff Downs is too busy with Yes, so he won't be touring. We'll see what band Trevor Horn puts together for that. Anyway, all of that to say happy birthday to Seal, 60 years old today. One more. Just one more. Bobby Brown. No, not Bobby Brown. Millie Bobby Brown. Now, if there was already an artist out there named Bobby Brown, would you name your daughter Millie Bobby Brown?
She's British, so... Right?
Millie Bobby, just so you know, Millie Bobby Brown is not related to
Bobby Brown.
Bobby Brown.
Who,
totally different.
Yeah, bit of a different...
What's fun about
person.
that to me, we haven't actually watched Stranger Things. And you think we would have, because I guess it has a bunch of 80s references, and we're totally about the 80s.
It's too scary for me.
Yeah,
It's
probably
way
not
too
our kind of
scary.
thing. But I don't know, let us know in the chat if you think we're wrong about that. And because, Paulo Zeus mentions A Kiss from a Rose by Seal. Man, that's one of the songs that gets me. Oh, right there. Millie Bobby Brown, though, besides starring in Stranger Things, also starred in Enola Holmes. And the follow-up to that, the second Enola Holmes film. Those were fun. We do recommend them, so happy birthday. Happy birthday, Millie Bobby Brown, who is only 19 years old today, which means she was underage when she was making those movies. What do you mean under? What does that even mean? But she didn't seem that young when those films were made. And let me go back to my notes here. Oh, worth seeing this week. Just real quick, I did an episode with James Valiant called Let's Get Spiritual.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very, very good talk.
I think James and I we're starting to hit a groove here, because I think you're right. I think that was a pretty damn good episode. Link is in the show notes. I didn't do a Thursday show. I took the day off. I put my feet up, waiting for somebody to rub them. No, I put my feet up and took the day off, and that was cool. Other shows that I recommend this week, if you didn't hear Yaron Brooks' show with Alex Epstein, great interview, great show. Kind of concise, kind of short, because Alex was on a time budget. But that just means they really fit a lot in I think, maybe 90 minutes of show. Definitely give that one a listen. Also, on the ARC UK, the discussion of the the discussion of the series Wednesday. That was great fun as well. If you liked the TV show Wednesday, and if you haven't seen it yet, I think we recommend it.
Yes.
It was mostly good. And by the end, it was well worth seeing. It's one of those ones where partway through, you're like, I'm not sure I'm going to like this. And then by the time you get through the whole thing, you're like, no, I like that.
It was good. It was a lot of fun. That's I'll say that.
Yeah.
I do believe we actually had another birthday. A lady named Linda Cordair, who had a birthday. I do believe.
Oh, she did have a birthday, didn't she?
So happy birthday, Linda! Happy belated.
Yes.
Happy birthday month.
I hope people honored your birthday by buying lots of the amazing things at Cordair.com.
Yeah, and do we want to talk about what else we've been listening to and what we might recommend?
Yeah, let's see. I need to say that quiet quitting is back. I just discovered this today. You remember there was this idea of your employers are taking advantage of you. They're making you work harder than you contracted for, getting you to stay overtime or do work that wasn't originally part of your job responsibilities. And folks started doing something called quiet quitting.
But that's not new.
And it turns out that, no, that just means that they're like, I don't think I'm getting paid enough. I'm not going to work as hard. And I had, when this was a topic and there were some shows about it, episodes, I got a lot of pushback on this one. Because people were telling me, I'm not being lazy. I'm just not doing stuff that is not part of my job. Because employers are really trying to take advantage of me. And it's unjust to do that. Well, there's a new version of it now. Or rather, there's a new twist on it. It's still a thing. The new one is Bare Minimum Monday. Bare Minimum Monday is the latest workplace trend hitting productivity.
Oh, boy.
The newest trend, joining the likes of quiet quitting and resenteeism. Boy, that was a new word for me to see. My spell check, it's so new, my spell checker still tells me it's not really a word. Resenteeism involves putting in just the bare minimum of effort on Mondays. Well, with the kind of people I hung out with when I was young, they all put in the bare minimum on Mondays because they were still recovering from the weekend. But I can't believe that was still a thing. And that I think leads us into the one other thing I wanted to talk about today.
I have a thought on that, but go ahead.
Well, the one other thing I wanted to talk about today was we finally, we've been in the process of catching up on classic movies we've never seen before. Films where when we say it, you're like, you've never seen that film before? What's wrong with you? But, there's always a few of those. I think Spartacus might be next on the list. Those kind of movies that everybody should have seen. And so, Amy and I watched one of those films, which has one or two of those lines, which are in the movie, even though you've never seen the movie. And that is On the Waterfront. Directed by Elia Kazan, starring Marlon Brando.
Before we get into that, though, I just want to say about the whole resenteeism and the bare minimum Mondays.
Yes, resenteeism.
Is that I really think that a lot of this is coming out, all these new words, people saying, oh, it's a new trend or whatever it is. It's because a lot of people are working from home. And it's not something, it's a new concept for a lot of people to be self-motivated, to be self-starters, to track their own hours, to figure out whether or not they're working enough from working from home. And I think, you have people who are, trying to figure it all out because, you're not going to have a lot of visibility with your coworkers and your managers, and it's not going to be so apparent exactly what people are doing. So you're going to have a lot of confusion, a lot of strange new words coming up that, people think that are some sort of new trend. It's not. When people were working in offices around their managers, around their coworkers, it wasn't so much of an issue because you weren't having to be a self-starter. You were, you had somebody, looking over you. So I'm not surprised that people are coming up with new terms or supposedly new terms for all of that. But the whole idea of trying to figure out if you are taking on too much in a particular position to where it's not appropriate anymore, or it's not a fair trade anymore. Of course, that's always going to come up forever and ever. But
Yeah, well, you're right. Everything old is new again. And the point I made at the time is if you really are being taken advantage of, and all that really means is you are being compelled to work more than you agreed to and more than you think you want to do, you need an exit strategy. You need to get out of that position because that will destroy your soul to go into work and say, I need to do less than I'm being asked to do. Yeah. I need to do less than I can because I have chosen a job that doesn't deserve that.
Right.
It's one thing if your employer is running you ragged, it's a lousy job, you need to stick around for a while until you can do something better. We're certainly not saying there aren't bad bosses or bad jobs out there.
But, you also need to have the courage and the integrity to communicate with your manager and, be completely open and transparent about what's happening. And then, and if the expectations don't align and you really do objectively think that you are being taken advantage of or treated unfairly, then find something different.
And one crazy thing you can do, this will be really weird, I'll say it quietly so it's just between us. You could actually talk to your boss about it. And everybody's like, you can't talk to your boss. Those people are irrational. They don't care anyway. It's amazing what happens if you actually dialogue with people. Even people you think you can't, they aren't approachable. They're not open to reason. You can't talk to them. It's amazing what happens. Anyway, it's always worth a shot. If nothing else, you will find out, oh yeah, they can't be reasoned with, or it won't make any difference. But if you've never tried, that's the easy way to just say, yeah, it wouldn't do any good. You don't want that. The musician Frank Grail is in the chat, and he says, I had mentioned, oh yeah, you seem to look like Harlan Ellison in your young photo. I hope I looked like a younger Harlan Ellison
Yeah.
in my younger photo.
Yes.
I certainly would have liked to have had his degree of success as a writer. We just lost him like 5 years ago, the writer
Yeah, in
Harlan Ellison.
2018. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, Jim says, what? That's weird. Talk to your boss? Yeah, who'd have thought? Who'd have thought? Apollo Zeus says, you gain their respect if you do that. That's true.
Yeah.
Even if they get angry that you talk to them, it has a positive impact. It is worth saying, for both your sake and theirs,
Yeah.
all sorts of good stuff come out from the things that you don't want to do. That'll relate to my Post-it note at the end of the episode. But before that, yes, we watched On the Waterfront. And great film. There's a reason why it won 8 Academy Awards, including Brando and Eva Marie Saint, and I'm pretty sure Elia Kazan won the award, although there were people who were very angry at Elia Kazan because he had flirted with communism. And he went and hung out with the communists because it was a time when a lot of people thought that America was violating free speech. It was violating people's liberty. And so, yeah, he went to see what the communists had to offer. And he found out that although they talked about, yeah, we'll give you freedom, we'll give you liberty, we'll let you speak out, unlike that oppressive capitalist state, it turned out, who'd have thought,
Who'd have thunk?
that the communists were actually authoritarians.
What?
Once you sign on with the communists, they treated you like communists.
Yeah, Kazan said, if you want to get a taste of what the police state is like, then, join that group. I think he talked about how, they were trying to control his thoughts, and, it's just freedom of speech. Sure.
So a couple of years after that, and after Elia Kazan testified before the HUAC, the House Un-American Activities Commission, he got a lot of pushback from leftists in Hollywood. His own friends, his allies, the people who should have been on his side, but hadn't learned the lessons that Elia Kazan had learned yet. So when On the Waterfront was released, there was a certain amount of pushback. But it was such a great film that, it still won 8 Academy Awards. And it made a lot of the points that Elia Kazan wanted to make about the political situation at the time. But one of the messages for me on that, and I need to write more about this, I've had some great conversations about it since watching the film. Elia Kazan, there was a time when he would have called himself a communist or a communist sympathizer. And then he learned more, and he went and discovered what those people really were about, what that system really led to, and changed his perspective. And that's what people do. We assume that anybody who is quote-unquote our opposition, it's kind of hard to call anybody our opposition when I don't consider myself a right-winger, and I certainly don't consider myself on the left. But we just assume, if you're over there on the left, you're an innovator, you're a power luster. Somehow you can be both of those things. You're both an ideologue and you're an anti-ideologue, an anti-intellectual, and you don't think. We assume all of these things about all of those people.
Yes, and they are monolithic.
Yeah, it's like I've said about the left and the right. If you're on the right, you just assume everybody on the left is essentially the same as everybody on the far left, the fringe, the crazies. They're all the same. But on the right, it's very interesting because we've got the old-style conservatives, We've got the ideologues, the people who are all about conservative ideology. You've got the libertarians. You've got the Ted Cruz types who talk about the Constitution, but they're also traditionalists. You've got the Donald Trump types who say explicitly that they're anti. Well, he doesn't say he's anti-intellectual. He says he's non-intellectual. I think he's giving himself too much credit. But you've got all these different kinds of people on the right. It's heterogeneous. There's all this stuff on the right, but on the left, they're all the same. And if you're on the left and read what people on the left write, they're like, we're not all the same. We run the gamut. We've got everything from Joe Biden, old hidebound, blue dog Democrats, to people who are much more principled, like Bernie Sanders, and really far out there, the AOCs. The left is heterogeneous. We've got all kinds, whereas the right,
they're monolithic.
They're all the same. And the mistake that both sides make is they don't realize the left is full of a bunch of individuals. And a lot of those people, I would say the majority of those people, actually believe what they say.
Right.
And the majority of those people are individuals on their own individual journey. Mm-hmm. And the same thing for the better people on the right. One of the lessons of On the Waterfront for me, both in the movie and the themes in the movie, and in the character arc, no, not of Terry in the movie, although that's part of it, but of Elia Kazan himself, is that people are people. And that means they have individual minds. Mm-hmm. And they believe what they believe. The great thing about Ayn Rand, and I know not all of our listeners are Ayn Rand fans or objectivists, but we certainly are. The great thing about Ayn Rand is that, and again, whether you agree with her or not, you read her writings, she is talking to individual, rational minds. She is engaging with the individual, with the thinker, with you. And to the extent we want to engage in cultural change, and certainly to the extent we want to engage in politics, that is the way.
Yeah, in talking to you, Robert, about a conversation that you had with another friend of ours, a very interesting conversation, and your point was that Elia Kazan, he was, the idea is that even though he joined the Communist Party and he tried to work within their system and he was curious about it and he was active-minded and he was honest and he eventually got out of it. He got another guy out of it as well at the same time, and then reported about their activities. So yeah, I mean, you can't, if you see somebody, whether that's online or in person or whatever it is, and they say, "Oh, I'm a communist," the question to them is, then, why don't you move to Cuba? No. The question is, what do you mean by communism? And have them explain it to the best of their ability, and then you can get into the ideas and talk ideas with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are, don't assume that people are entirely, completely evaders or dishonest, especially if they're young. Of course, we've said this so many times in so many ways. So,
yeah.
But yeah, Jim in the Facebook chat about On the Waterfront, he says Orson Welles was upset about Kazan and On the Waterfront. Orson said that the film glorifies the informer, and Jim says, "I wish I could have reminded Wells that informing is the moral thing to do when crime is involved in what you're informing about." Yeah, of course. I mean, if you're a mob boss resorting to murder to try to protect your racket, I mean, yeah, really, Orson Welles?
That's amazing. I mean, and it would be interesting to hear how Orson Welles, phrased it.
Yeah.
But just as stated there, that is almost jaw-dropping.
That's awful.
The idea that, no, you don't snitch. No matter what.
Snitches get stitches.
Snitches get stitches. That's.
It's crazy. I don't even. There was. Yeah, it is bizarre.
Yeah, and I understand there's a conflict there. I understand there's the idea of loyalty, but all that is laid bare in the cab ride.
Yes.
That Charlie and Terry have.
Yes.
And it's made very clear who the moral sinner is in that context.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I gotta say, I was, a lot of people looked at me and Robert. We were with friends last night, and they said, "You just saw that film?" Like, yeah.
How old are you people?
But it was interesting because, it was just a very good movie, very well done. I should say it was pretty satisfying.
Yeah.
I'll say that. It was rough and tumble. And I do want to call out, I don't know too much about him. If you do know a little bit more about him, there's an actor named Patrick Henning, and he played K.O. Duggan in On the Waterfront. He plays a smaller part in the movie, but I first saw him and I'm like, I love his face. He has such a gruff, just such a gruff face.
It's a great look.
He's such a character, just such an amazing looking character.
And he's the kind of character who can smile, and it lights up his face, but he still looks tough.
Yeah.
He just looks kind of radiant. It's so cool.
I love it. I just loved. Pat Henning. So. Yeah, he has passed away long ago, but it's amazing.
The 12-string guitarist Frank Grail. I joke about this because I've gotten to the point where I always point out the musicians in our audience. But Frank Grail points out that Eva Marie Saint is still with us. She's 98 years old, and she is still above ground, which is super cool. We always celebrate older actors because the older we get, it's great to see people like Dick Van Dyke still running around at 96, and so thank you for pointing out that Eva Marie Saint is still with us.
And Jim says, incidentally, so back to the On the Waterfront movie, there is a priest character, Father Barry.
Oh yeah, Carl Malden.
Says, even though I'm an atheist, I found Father Barry's Sermon on the Docks to be the most rousing sermon I've ever heard in movies or in real life. Father Barry is a man who walks his talk.
Yes.
And I remember that Father Barry and the character, K.O. Duggan, had that conversation. And he's like, you're going to go with me down the line all the way. I think I'm paraphrasing what they're... Yeah. And I'm like, I get chills thinking about that because you could just see it. You could just see it in both their faces. It was amazing. It was such a moment of integrity.
Yes.
So good.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, and it is a great scene, Frank, when our antagonist is tossed in the river.
Yeah.
He's trying to play the tough guy. He's going to beat up Terry, and it turns out he has to bring in his other thugs to make that happen.
He's like, help! He called out one of his thugs to help him.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
And hey, Terry was a prize fighter. He could have been a contender.
Damn
right. Damn right.
Anyway, great movie. If you saw it a long time ago, watch it again.
Great takeaways.
It was very visceral. It was in black and white. You can't do any better than that.
No,
the level of viscerality, I don't know, was immense. It was just
visceralness. the quantity of visceral. But yes, great film, and we're learning that if there are classic films you've never seen, they're just like gems. They're gemstones out there waiting for you to pick them up. Yeah. This has been fun, and we are far from done with that. So we're going to keep that up.
Yeah, and I can tell you a little bit more about what I've been listening to and what I might recommend coming up here.
Yes.
So I just got done with the season 3 of Mo Obituaries with Mo Rocca, and I just got to tell you that he will talk about people that you have never heard of before, and you will come away after a half an hour, 40 minutes or whatever of the show with such a sense of who they were, what their values were, and you will form a bond and a friendship with these people. It is so well done.
If you like biographies, or even if you don't think that's your kind of thing, you can look it up, just the word obituaries with an M at the beginning. The host is Mo Rocca.
Yeah, and if you really want to feel the feels, especially, Mo Rocca does such a fantastic job bringing out the life of these people who once lived, and their great adventures and their amazing moments, and such great historical context. It's very moving, very meaningful. Yeah, it's great. And so another thing is, I just listened to Barry Weiss with regard to that one type 2 diabetes drug that people are trying to get a hold of to lose weight. I forget what it's called. Ozempic or Ozempic or something, whatever it's called. Anyway, it's pretty good. But the best thing about that Barry Weiss interview most recently was they announced a new podcast called The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling.
Oh, yes.
And that's going to premiere on next Tuesday on Mardi Gras the 21st. And so look that up, The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling. Knowing Barry Weiss, she is not some sort of, she herself is a lesbian who is married to a lovely lady. And, knowing her and knowing what I know about J.K. Rowling, there's a lot of nuances that people who accuse J.K. Rowling of being a
trans-exclusionary radical feminist.
Yes, trans-exclusionary radical feminist.
In other words, she's a radical feminist, and that's cool, but she's excluding transsexuals from her advocacy, and it turns out that's even worse than not being a feminist at all in the eyes of these radicals.
Yeah, I mean, and you can see, a lot of young people who don't know the context of what's going on in the legal system, especially in the UK and Scotland. They don't understand the implications of what's going on, and why J.K. Rowling would be so concerned about trans women, because they are men who, we have friends who are trans women, we have friends who are trans men, and they're lovely people, and I love them, and I want to protect them, and if anybody touches them, I will kill them, right? But there are outlying cases that are concerning and that are legitimately of concern. And J.K. Rowling looks at these kinds of cases and she questions them. And so the trans activists will look at that and say, don't even question, don't even think about these outlying cases. Otherwise, we will call you a super meanie. And you don't want that. But anyway, so somebody actually interviewed J.K. Rowling, and then they went ahead and they went out into the field and they interviewed trans activists and got their perspectives. They interviewed people, I think, in the court system over there, and the prison system. So anyway, that's going to be quite educational. No matter how you look at those things, no matter what your opinion is about any of that.
That's going to be good. That's going to be really compelling. If you haven't followed it, the issues are more intriguing than you might imagine. We're aware of the controversy in young people transitioning, and including surgery and puberty blockers and all sorts of things that would be and will be very difficult to reverse if it turns out this is just a phase they're going through. There's also the issue of transsexuals in sports. Should men, for example, should former men, trans women, be playing on women's leagues? And then there's the issue of prisons, which are sex segregated. Should trans women who were men, be in women's prisons? if you don't know the issue, that might sound like an easy one, but what about men who were convicted of sexual assault, who now find themselves identifying as women? Should they be in a woman's prison with women?
Yeah. So these are outlying cases.
But the point is, Rowling is willing to raise them. They need to be addressed. And she is taking all sorts of heat for even talking about it.
Right. I mean, this is a woman who created a character in Hermione Granger who questioned, again, something that people thought was an outlying kind of thing and no one wanted to talk about, which is house elf rights. Obviously. Anyway, I just thought that it's always funny to look back at that. Thank you, Andrea. It's Ozempic? I'm not so sure. That's that type 2 diabetes drug that, by the way, as far as I understand, you really can't use that drug unless you, first of all, it's a shot. It's not a pill. And I guess you have to be committed to taking it for quite a long time, or maybe the majority of your life. But yeah, there's still a lot to be learned about it. And of course, it doesn't replace fruits and vegetables. So it doesn't replace that. Or fiber, or anything that would actually make your metabolism better. So anyway, interesting stuff. And Jim also asks, what did we think of composer Leonard Bernstein's score for the film On the Waterfront? Now, I didn't know that Leonard Bernstein was the one who did that.
I didn't either, but the only thing I can say is I didn't notice it, meaning that it must have been very good, very effective.
Well, I have something to say about this, because I noticed the score of the film, and I didn't particularly, I should say this. Some parts it worked, some parts it did not. When, I think it's Edie and Terry were up on the rooftop talking, with the pigeons and whatever.
That's right. You mentioned at the time you thought it was too much.
It was really loud and it was forced. And it's like, yes, this music indicates that they are falling in love.
This scene is not as romantic as the music is trying to make it.
But it's the romance and the chemistry was more subtle than the music. So I just felt that it didn't quite match up. But other than that, there's no complaints. Not really. Yeah,
and obviously brilliantly done. It was more a question of did it match. I can see that. Let's see. Apollo Zeus asks, are we doing a clubhouse afterwards? No. Although he says he will open an unofficial one if not. I've got some things I've got to do right after the show, but I may listen in on that just to see if there is a conversation and what it's about. So thank you for asking about that. We've talked about doing clubhouses after the shows, and then it turns out that because of the time slot we're in, we always end up busy afterwards. But it would be interesting to listen in on that. Thank you for asking. To wrap up, I do have a Post-it note of the week, and I do have homework, but the homework isn't something I can really share. It's I'm going to be brainstorming our anniversary. No, I don't mean our wedding anniversary. I mean our 5 minutes anniversary. Because there is just one more show before our 3-year anniversary. So I'm thinking maybe the next show, which would be just 3 or 4 days before that March 1st anniversary, maybe we should do another drunken podcasting episode. We haven't done that in over a year. But I do remember it was great fun doing shots and answering the kind of questions we don't normally answer.
That's true. Tequila truth serum, as it were. And, yeah.
I know you got sillier at first than I did, but by the end of it...
No, I'm very level-headed, no matter what.
Yeah, by the end of it, you were kind of... Whereas I peaked more at the end. Folks who know me know I'm not a drinker. I used to be back in the glory days, but these days I'm a lightweight. So we could do drunken podcasting. But we also need to think about, what do we want? Our 3-year anniversary, 3rd year.
Whoa, 3
Holy
years.
smoke. First episode was a preview episode, March 1st, 2020. So we'll be thinking about ways to celebrate that. And why I say brainstorming is part of also what I'm doing is thinking, well, as we get into year 3, what changes do we want to make? We got to make some changes. Can't just keep doing the same thing all the time. We could, but you deserve an even better show, a more compelling show, a more interesting show, a more entertaining and amusing show, and we're going to be working on that. My Post-it note for the week, which I posted online in case the lettering is too small to show on camera. But because we're thinking about, or I'm certainly thinking about making changes to a lot of things, including the show, is just my reminder about change, which is, if you want what you've never had, you're going to have to do what you've never done. And this is a great reminder for me to, again, get out of the comfort zone, make some changes, do things that you're not even sure will work, take some chances. It's a good reminder about change. Powerful to me, kind of thing that I need to put up on the wall and look at this week. Keep reminding myself. So that's my Post-it note for the week. I always say if you've got a pad of Post-it notes, and if you don't, let me know and I'll send you one. Put it up in places that reminds you to fall back into better habits or to think about things you don't normally think about. So this week I will be reminding myself, well, if you want what you've never had, Apollo Zeus, for example, made a comment about getting us over 1,000 subscribers, something that we need to do in order to enable Super Chat on YouTube. So like and share, folks. Help us out with that. If you want what you've never had, you're going to have to do what you've never done. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's going to be...
yeah, and that's something that we can talk about maybe next time.
Yeah,
I had some major insights this week, and which we haven't even touched on yet, but maybe we could do that for next time.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Make a list, and let's plan it. We'll put a massive insight show together. But tonight, obviously, we kept it really short. And thank you for your comments. Thank you for joining us in the chat. Where Jim says, drunken podcasting, yes, because the last time you did that, I thought Amy was insufficiently drunk because she wasn't worrying her slurs.
Well,
and he says, neither were you, Robert.
Do better.
No, we weren't that drunk. We were just silly. Sillier than you. We're always silly, so maybe it didn't show as much. But sillier than usual, that's for sure. We could make the anniversary show a drunken show, but that seems a little too drunken, but maybe not. We'll think about it. We will think about that. With that said, feel free to share with us both in the chat and in the 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir Facebook group your suggestions for future episodes, what we should do to celebrate the anniversary, topics that we should cover, anything else that you think we should do or maybe shouldn't do. Let us know. Incidentally, if you go to robertnasir.com, you can support the show. Some of you already do. I've got to give you a huge shout out. Thank you for that. But you will see links to Patreon and PayPal. Those are the accounts that let you put in a monthly donation to the show, put in a $2 Patreon or a $20 Patreon, whatever fits your time, energy, budget, and you think this show is worth to you, or just to say thanks. You can do one-time payments through PayPal. We appreciate that as well, especially if you're not a Patreon kind of person. Whatever works for you, thank you. Again, super thanks to those of you who are already doing that. Thank you for that. And with that said, I think we need to wrap. I think we went long. We'll make next week really short. Don't I always promise that? In the meantime, thank you for joining us. Thank you for spending part of your Sunday afternoon/evening, depending on where in the world you are, with us. As always, we wish you success. We wish you every success that you so richly deserve. How do I know you deserve success? Because people who don't deserve success don't watch a show like this. You are the best. You really are the best audience in YouTube and podcasting. We do not take that for granted. We do appreciate you, and that's why we wish you success. We wish you happiness and flourishing. We wish you all of the values that flow from the virtues that you practice. And as always, we wish you love.
Mwah.